Most grinders, even $5,000 ones you spent way too much money on, come from the factory misaligned. So every single grinder ever made leaves the factory with some amount of variance, and sometimes, as we're going to see today, an absurd amount of variance despite high price tags, which means worse espresso for you for no good reason. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to check the alignment, fix it, also show you who this is for, and talk about, does it actually make a difference? Because there's a lot of debate on that. I'm going to showcase for you the best practices that you can apply at home, because almost every single flat burr grinder can be calibrated using the same principles. So what works here for me will also work at home for you. And if you like this kind of content that focuses more on the technical side of espresso without just telling you to buy more gear, make sure to sign up at the email below. So this is the problem we're solving, and it's that uneven gap causes uneven grind. So when you have two burr sets like this, what you're attempting to do is align them in such a way that both of the burrs are completely symmetrical one with one another. What often ends up happening is you think that your burrs are perfectly aligned, but you actually have a little bit of an off kilter. And they are, in fact, misaligned like this. This is a rather extreme scenario of what that would look like, but this is your burrs. Your grind size over on this end is that big. Meanwhile, your grind size over on this end is only that big. Whenever we're dealing with espresso, you're dealing with a distribution curve that's in microns. So this micron distribution curve might be something between 200 and 400, and you're going for, especially on flat burrs, which is what we're dealing with today, some kind of bell curve within that of your grind distribution. And the issue is, if your gap here and misalignment is something like 50 microns, we're now actually going to take that average hump and extend it out into that 50 micron territory. And so what this often contributes to is less clarity, less evenness of grind. We're trying to avoid this so that we can maximize the crazy expensive grinder that we spend a lot of money on. To help illustrate this point, we're going to be looking at a Ditting 1203. Oh, this thing's heavy. All right, so we've got the Ditting on the bench, and I'm going to start the teardown. To get to the burr set, we got to remove the hopper here, and then remove the top burr carrier. So for this job, underneath this hopper lid, you have 4 screws, one here, one back here, and then the same thing repeated over here on the back side. If you don't have one, I absolutely recommend a magnetic part tray. That makes life very easy. Now that we've got all 4 screws out, this thing just lifts out and we're in. So we are now top down on this grinder. And in order to take this top burr carrier off, we got to get all 4 of these screws on the 4 corners. Go ahead and just loosen it up with your screwdriver. And then if the threads are light enough for you, we're gonna take the rest out by hand. And be very careful when you're doing this to not drop those screws. Well, I don't know if you heard that, but I dropped one of the screws that I told you not to. For when you do unknowingly drop one of those screws because you're an idiot like me, this is, if you don't want to use the magnet holder, this is the other way to do it. Oh, most beautiful sight imaginable, dropping that final screw in there. So, for the top cover, but this thing just lifts out, and you can see that giant, beautiful 120 millimeter burr set. That is an 80 millimeter burr set from Makonig, just for reference. But today we're talking about a burr alignment, and the issue that you're facing is that this carrier and then the carrier of the spinning burr up in the grinder might not be perfectly aligned to each other. And I will show you how we're going to accomplish this. Top burr carrier's off, and you can see I have taken this off before. And one good trick is always to mark where you're going to realign everything. There's our burr set, and now we'll do the inside. Great, so now we can touch the inside. Whenever you go to spin these screws off, don't be smashing a screwdriver into these burrs. I'm doing it lightly, but that's really dumb to do. If you ever have an issue where you can't spin off one of these screws, I have them pretty loose right now, but that has potential to spin the whole carrier. The better option is somehow get a hold of this center carrier. So I believe that this is a 13 mil, and hold on to that with one hand and then unscrew with the other. I have taken this apart before, but I've never calibrated it. Awesome. That's our burr out. All right, I want to show you real quick what I think the best way is to test the health of your burrs. So I know that this burr set here is already old. This came off of the grinder in our coffee shop, Malconic E80S, and so it is bad. This one here I bought used, and it did come from a shop, but this Ditting is from 2007. And you can see that these burrs are actually from 2016, and I don't believe they got used much since they were replaced. The simple trick is a fingernail test. I recommend using your thumb, and be careful with these burrs, particularly any burr that has these internal jagged points. It can cut the mess out of your hand if you're not careful, but run the edge of your thumb with some very gentle pressure along the burrs. If you look very closely, you can see some of my fingernail left behind as I do this. It's almost acting as a fingernail file. That's usually a good sign of healthy burrs. Meanwhile, these bad boys here, no matter how hard I rub my fingernail into that, I am getting essentially 0. So that's how you can tell that these burrs are dull. I wish I could tell you that testing burr sharpness was more of a science than that. It's not. I think even Malconic, some of the guys over there said that if burrs seem sharp, they might be, and if burrs seem dull, they definitely are. So there's not a whole lot of science outside of actually getting a microscope, looking at the burr ridges, and then taking an educated guess at best. That's why flavor is king on everything. So I'm going to do my best to show this through the grate. We have the pin of our dial indicator set mostly towards the edge of the internal housing, and that's what's spinning. If I focus in a little easier, you can see that our pin is set to roughly 20 thousandths of an inch. The way these dial indicators work is you're not necessarily looking for where it is on the indicator, but instead how much it moves as you move whatever object it is. So what we're going to do is spin this around and look for how much play we get. That seems to be the top, a little under 21 thousandths of an inch. And then the bottom is touching roughly 23 thousandths of an inch, if not a little bit lower. So we might be looking at something like 0.23 thousandths of an inch of play whenever we spin this carrier around. And for these commercial drip grinders, that's going to be particularly true. You can see I'm actually getting a bit of hysteresis happening right now, where we're getting some drift. My goal is not to get an exact number here, but to show the severity of the problem. I think that 2.2 thousandths of an inch is somewhat correct. And if you're wondering about the effect size on that, like I said, our espresso range might be between 240, 400 microns, but roughly 60 microns. If we're trying to get a range around 275 or 300, and we have 60 microns difference, that is actually a large effect size. Again, make sure that this is super clean. If you are able, make sure that the top and the bottom are in the same spot. A lot of burrs will be labeled top. This is the top carrier, and we're going to line it back up. Foil, which is the method we're going to be using, is I think something like 0.6 thousandths of an inch. So I'm expecting that based off of the amount of play we had in there, we're going to end up needing 3 pieces. Let's go ahead and quickly re-tack up all of these guys. One thing, as always, do not over tighten this. I absolutely recommend even pressure. Go in a star pattern. You are not trying to tighten this thing to never move again. You're trying to tighten it to be snug. It should be happy, not crushed. If you are able to torque spec it, I actually do like torque specking. It's probably overkill on what we're dealing with, but there's no reason not to. Now, most people will use an Expo marker, and that works, so like a whiteboard marker. But if you happen to have access to a chalk marker, I'm going to show you why I prefer them. First off, the lines on them are very, very hefty. I tend to use purple whenever I can. I just think that purple shows a great contrast and is a lot easier to notice things. So red and purple are my recommendations, but really you can get by with whatever. Let me put this back in and show you the sequence, and then you'll see why. As always, make sure things are as clean as possible. I'm feeling pretty decent with that. You should vacuum it. You should use a rag. Alas, I am not. So as I said, I already have a mark on this end of the burr up top there, and then on the housing. So I'm always making sure to line those two back up. Now for this burr set, I'm actually not going to be applying the marker, it's always just until snug. If you're struggling to keep this burr carrier in the right spot, make sure you grab onto that center bolt, or like I said, you can be stupid and put something in there. I don't recommend you do that. I have done it before. Don't do that. Reinsert our top carrier. If you're able to torque spec, I recommend that. Maybe just something like, I don't know, 15 inch-pounds. That's always great. But if not, just, again, until quite snug, and let that be the end of it. So down here on the side is our adjustment. What we're wanting is whenever we take this carrier and spin it, we feel some friction. Here's some friction going on, but I feel none. What may happen is you end up going all the way down to your finest setting, and uh-oh, I still feel none. Now, the way a lot of these commercial grinders work, and you can see I've already undone it over here, is you just essentially take that max adjustment, so we're as fine as we can go, and with this guy, I pull this knob out a little bit, and now I can spin freely. You can hear the teeth kind of chattering as I run by. Now, I have a whole other one that I can go down. What you should do is take both hands, give yourself more range, and start spinning as you adjust finer. And oh, we're touching now. I'm going to back off just slightly, but we are touching, still backing off. So that tells you a lot. You can hear that. And now, if you're smart, you'll take that, and maybe that will be our new lowest setting. But now that we've spun it a few times, annoyingly, we take everything back off. I think I probably didn't apply enough marker, but you can see that over here, we've got some of that purple that has transferred over. This over here is scrapings from where I think the previous owner had it aligned, and clearly they didn't calibrate it. But that over there is where we got purple, and it seems to be mostly favoring this screw here, but somewhat between the two. Let me find my marker. We'll mark over in orange. I'm seeing right there is kind of the heat of where we need the application. I'll go ahead and unscrew these. If we take a look at this side, the wear is fairly even. Quite surprised. Maybe a little extra oomph right there. But we have an even rim all the way around. The teeth are pretty even all the way around. On this, you're actually analyzing the opposite. Where you have less marker is the high spot. So this right here has very little, and maybe this over here has the most, but that's really not bad. Maybe, you know what, we'll apply one layer over on this side and try again, just around this screw here, because that seems to be where the bulk of the marker still remains. But the rest of it, we're not going to touch. Go ahead and make your mark on where you need to do the application. Because we have the marking on the underside of the burr, we also know how to align it properly after. Now, my marker method, using the chalk marker, is really good, not necessarily for the burr that you originally marked, but for the burr that you left unmarked with the imprinting. I find that a lot easier to notice and adjust for. My typical recommendation is that the burr that gets adjusted for the grind size remains unmarked. So in this case, it's that bottom burr. So just quick clarification for you. When you're looking at the marker trick, what I'm looking for is how much of the surface area was touching. So if I only see like 1/3 of the marker was rubbed off in the case of the side that was fully marked, or 1/3 was transferred over in the side that was unmarked, that tells me that the burrs aren't that aligned. Let's say it was 3/4. That tells me I'm pretty flat. I don't have a big high spot. But the smaller that contact patch is, the more off kilter your burrs are. Whenever I see small amount, I think I need to make a big change. Honestly, getting a full perfect transfer is really tough. I typically go for about 2/3. And if I get to that point, I'm pretty happy. I tend to think that if you're at 2/3 contact, you're probably, I'm kind of making this up, but within 10 to 20 microns, and I doubt we'll ever taste that in the cup. I certainly haven't noticed anything significantly better by seeking those diminishing returns. So in order to do this, we're just going to take little foil squares and cut them. Now for this one, I'm really only wanting 4. Take that grease and lightly apply it to the area you're going to be marking. And this is going to act as a little adhesive, obviously non-permanent, but a little adhesive. Now, the reason I applied them like that, and you need to check the way your burr is designed, is this has 2 rims, and those rims are where the burr is sitting against the carrier. We need to make sure that the foil will contact these rims as well, and we'll realign it. And there we go. We can go ahead and screw this guy back on there. Awesome. That is now nice and fully coated, and we will apply it back on after we adjust the other burr. So once you start getting into these ones that have a whole lot of adjustment that needs to be made, you are going to hit a bit of a snag. I think I need 3 pieces of foil over on this edge, and that's closest to this screw. So this screw, I'm going to do a triple foil stack. But then it leaves you in this weird predicament where this screw and this screw are going to be unsupported, and if we torque those down, you might end up causing a bit of a weird spacing. What I'm actually going to do is do a triple here, a double further out to this side, then a single down here, and do that on both sides, and hope for the best. The unfortunate thing about this burr alignment is you're going for good enough, not perfect. Good enough matters a whole stinking lot. Like I said, I'm gonna apply some grease to act as an adhesive and keep our foil layers down. All right, let's start making our applications. We're concerned with where our burr contacts the carrier, and always sandwich the screw. Don't put it out in the center as much as you can avoid it. You're trying to avoid bowing the burr. And that also is a double. And we're doing that. We're going to do the same thing with doubles over on this edge. And lastly, we'll apply our singles. This is definitely the extreme scenario, but if it works for this grinder, it will work for your grinder too. Now for the unmarked carrier, which is this one, I like to take a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and clean up the edges. We're now going to reapply our top burr carrier, and I'm going to stance it off to where this thing freely spins now. Make sure we're not sandwiching down on it. I'll put all 4 bolts back in. Great, now it's time to do the same trick of giving it in while we slowly adjust it finer. Oh, I feel it bound up a little bit. You can hear that's still making contact only in certain parts, so it is certainly not fully aligned. But we're gonna give it several reps just to see how bad the problem is. So I'm realizing now I made a pretty decent mistake on the inside, the spinning burr carrier. So I did the exact opposite of what I should have done on this carrier. The marker had transferred over on this side, which was good because I saw which side was the high side, not the low side. So I should have mirrored all of my foil applications to the low side, which is this back side, but I was an idiot and did not. So I am now taking all that stuff I did and redoing it, except mirrored to the other side. And just start moving these to the opposite side. All right, all that's back in, screws back in. This is why I love these chalk markers. So you can see this over here is where we applied last time. And now we still have a little bit of misalignment because we have marker all over here. And so I might have been slightly off on my placement. I'm going to take the foil that was over here. I'm actually going to bring it over to this side. And I think that this top burr carrier will be perfectly aligned thereafter. I'm going to do that with actually just some tweezers. So there we go. I think I'm going to call it done on the top burr carrier after this one because I'm quite confident that my results will be as I would like it. All right, so I reapplied the marker. Let's get this thing tightened back together. Same old that we've been doing. I'm going to start spinning it and going slightly tighter just to show you. This is the top burr carrier. We're really even on all sides. It's even wear everywhere. I'm happy to say that this top burr is now officially aligned. The bottom burr is another story, and this is where you get to make your own judgment calls, and I know what mine's going to be. So I'm seeing that we now have purple transferred over, starting from about here to over to here. Most of it has transferred. If anything, we're slightly high. And really, we might even have some purple scraping over here. You might only have that small area left that is off. For me, that is more than good enough, especially on a grinder like this. They're a little bit harder to get perfect, but it is certainly way better. You can see that purple down there and all the way up here, which is about 2/3 of the disc. Maybe we're still off by like 0.005 of an inch, which is something like 15 microns, and that is not a big enough deal for me to worry about anymore. So I'm going to put everything together and say that we're done. So does burr calibration actually matter? And are you going to notice it in the cup? I think if you're chasing clarity and you want to make some espresso with some hyper light roasts or really cutting edge processes or anaerobics or whatever, then absolutely. For drip or immersion primarily, I don't know that you will ever taste the difference. It's still worth doing, in my opinion, just because, it might, and I think it's fun to tinker. But if you are going to only do French press, honestly, I don't think you need to do this. But the good news is if you want to do it anyway, or if you are espresso focused, calibration is almost free. It's just some aluminum foil and patience and patience and patience. So if you're feeling ambitious, about an hour of your time, I say that, then someone's going to comment, it took me 4 hours. Sorry. But worst case scenario, you tinker for an afternoon and not much changes. Best case scenario, you're confident in your grinder, you fix some problems, your grinder isn't a lemon from factory, and things go better for you. Somewhat permanently until you at least change the burrs. So will it transform your cup of coffee or your shot of espresso? Truthfully, no. This is not a silver bullet. It is not anything magic, but you already have the grinder. All you need to do is spend a little bit of time. Think of this less as chasing flavor, but more just unlocking that last little bit of potential from your coffee grinder. My take, you have the confidence, go ahead and do it. You can skip it and you're going to be fine. You're not really missing out on a ton, but try not to skip it. This is not the difference between a good and a bad cup, but simply good and slightly better. Anyway, that's it. Sign up to the emailer. Bye-bye.